Hey, I'm Willie from Fungi Ally. I'm here with Alyssa from Sugar Shack Mushrooms, and just wanted to talk to you some about your experience growing mushrooms. So curious how you first dove into the mushroom cultivation realm.
Yeah, I have been interested in mushrooms for a really long time. It feels kind of like a fuzzy spiral of knowing exactly how I fell into it, but I was farming organically flowers and salad for 10 years before doing this, and I had always been interested in mushrooms, just being such interesting other animals and other ways of growing protein, nutrient-dense food in small spaces. I'd previously to here lived in a lot of small cabins and apartments and stuff like that, thinking about kind of things you can grow in small tight spaces was something that was interesting to me. I guess I just really nerded out about it for probably 3 or 4 years before being able to do anything about it. I'd done a few growing mushrooms in buckets experiments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when I moved here to the Hudson Valley, it was really the first time in my life that I had the opportunity to have space to really try out some of these ideas. So it really felt like something I needed to just either try or shut up about a little bit. So I kind of went all in. And they have taught me a lot.
Cool.
For sure. It took probably a year of setup and lots of trial and error and unsuccessful inoculations and scary pressure cooker experiments and things until I could figure it out.
You didn't blow yourself up though.
I didn't blow myself up. Yep, still got
fingers,
all 10 right here, and all 2 eyes. But yeah, there's been an evolution of things like that, but so yeah, lots of lessons along the way from that.
Yeah. And you decided to kind of dive in during the whole process, making spawn and inoculating blocks and
Yeah.
and how's that been? How's that evolved?
Well, when I first was starting to think about it, I really was avoidant of the whole idea of doing lab work and doing the whole process, but the more research that I did and the more people I talked to, it felt like everything circled back to being based with having some kind of lab process. And I don't think now that I've done it for longer, I don't think that that's necessary for everybody. I don't think that everyone needs to be working in a lab all the time. I think for our year-round indoor process, it's definitely helpful, and I think because we have the space for it, it does make a little bit more sense as far as maintaining any profit for the farm, as opposed to only buying in pre-made blocks. So I think in those ways I kind of make everything an analogy to my previous farming experience. So I started understanding that the lab was really kind of like having a greenhouse on a regular farm.
Right.
Where it feels like to me, a farm growing vegetables or flowers could never afford to buy in all their starts. They have to make their own starts. So I kind of, when I started thinking of the lab that way, and also I went down and did a short 3-day workshop with this guy down in Tennessee, Hugh Brewer. He had taken some workshops with Paul Stamets and was just doing these basement workshops at his house, and that was really great because him and his wife were just doing it out of their home, and his lab was just in his basement. It was all really rough around the edges, and he was making inoculated blocks he was selling to other farms and doing a great job, and that really helped take the intimidation away from the lab process.
Yeah.
I saw him breaking so many rules, and then I was like, oh, I could probably do it if I'm allowed to break this many rules.
Yeah.
So that really was what pushed me into it, and we originally thought about doing all the straw production stuff, and really based on some of their feedback, they had done a lot of straw production, and they were like, don't do it. So I was really grateful to them for that advice, where they just talked about years of back breaking, straw shredding,
Yeah.
Just like it sounded like so much work, but I kept really wanting to think it would work because it seemed like more simple somehow, because it skipped the lab process. But I'm grateful for taking their advice early on.
Yeah.
On not doing that, because I could see how that would be a big pain and really challenging. But yeah, but it's been good. But I think the biggest lesson I've taken from doing lab work now for like 3 years is that I don't have to do the whole process and be diehard about making our own plates and capturing all our own like genetics or keeping them going and having jars that we expand. So really, you know, getting help and support from like other people who are making amazing genetics and mushroom spawn available, and helping that aid us along. So that's been a really big evolution for us. And for my use of the lab, for sure. I'm spending a lot less time fussing with little jars and plates that end up throwing my schedule off completely.
Yeah.
So that's been really nice.
It's like that balance of finding the right amount of support, the right amount of like financial dependence, and
totally
on another company to find the sweet spot.
Exactly, but as soon as I realized that that was a possibility, it really created so much less tension on my part of like, it didn't all have to come down to me. It's like if I was behind on spawn, I could order some in and it would be okay.
Yeah.
You know, so it takes the pressure off in a really nice way.
In the last couple of years growing, are there some like big changes or small changes that have had a big impact that have happened? You know, like switching bag sizes or anything like.
Yeah, the two biggest impacts really, like what allowed us to scale up to, I think, like a functional level of production for sure, was building our atmospheric steamer, which was we use a big 85-gallon barrel that we run on a timer with steam. And that changed everything for us, because before that I felt like I was a slave to these pressure cookers and it was never going to be sustainable. It was like making 16 bags, 5-pound bags at a time, you know, running 2 pressure cookers at a time. It was just crazy. So that was a major breakthrough in evolution for us. Being able to spend like 1 hour loading up 300 pounds of substrate and then walking away for the day was a total change for us. And then by default, that also taught us a lot of things about like, it's a little bit more high stakes when we make an inoculation that's much bigger. You know, if we have like bad spawn or something, it's much higher stakes to lose the whole inoculation versus when we were making smaller batches. So the other things that I've learned from it has just been like even more attentive to spawn quality and stuff like that, just because it's bigger risks. And then the other thing has been scaling up our fruiting bag sizes to 10-pound blocks has been really great. That's cut down on a lot of labor, and I don't know if it really affects the plastic waste, even though we are using those bio bags now, but I think you're using slightly less amount of plastic, and it's definitely less labor doing half the bags with the same amount of substrate.
Right.
So that's been a really great improvement for us.
Yeah.
Those have been the two really big takeaways of the year.
Yeah.
And just learning to watch the mushrooms and what they like and responding to them and kind of believing the mushrooms more than the sensors sometimes in our grow space, you know.
Totally.
So that's been another interesting thing, really, watching the mushrooms versus what the sensors are saying and seeing what they really need.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there a part to mushroom farming that you're like, each time you're like, oh man, I don't want to do this, but I have to?
I think for sure there's a lot of cleaning involved. It's like we clean our grow room twice a week. It used to be once a week, and then we had like a lot of bug and outbreak problems, so we switched to twice a week, and the benefit is like so clear that it feels like it's a no-brainer that has to happen, but always drag my feet about that.
Yeah. For
sure. I think the mushroom cleaning is probably the least, the mushroom room cleaning is probably the thing I drag my feet about the most, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, besides that, computer work, but that's true in the rest of my life as well. So I avoid the computer.
It's like a cultural truth.
Yeah, totally avoiding the computer.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's nice going to farmers market and seeing people who buy our stuff, but sometimes I drag my feet about that because I don't really love selling people things. I just want to give it away, and so that causes an internal conflict because I have to ask for money. But in the long run, I do like going and seeing people actually enjoying the mushrooms and stuff, so it's a rewarding part of it, but sometimes I do drag my feet about that too.
Yeah.
But
are there pieces of the process that you are like I always want to do this? Like, no, I'm doing that part.
Yeah, right.
No one else.
Well, I love the compost. I'm always happy to go turn the compost. I think I like inoculating. It's maybe just out of like a controlling need for feeling like needing to like make sure that like if it is messed up, it's my fault and not anyone else's kind of thing. But I think I've kind of gotten into, I like doing repetitive tasks. That's one of the things that I fell in love with farming. And it's actually one thing that I kind of miss in the mushroom farming world, because when I was, farming out in a field, you could be planting for like 8 hours a day doing the same task. And I like the like meditative state of doing repetitive tasks like that. And with mushroom farming, the way that we're doing it, there's not really those kind of things. Like we have like a lot of 1 or 2 hour tasks, and then they get switched up. So in those ways, it's nice because it's like a lot of diverse activity.
Right.
But I do like things where it's like can kind of get a repetitive flow sometimes. So I think inoculating is kind of fun for that reason.
Yeah.
Get some good music going and get into a flow for a little while is really nice. And I just like, I think anyone who's into growing stuff, like farming or gardening or anything, is just observing is such a big part of things. And so I love just spending time like watching what the mushrooms are doing, whether it's in the grow space or outdoors, and kind of just making mental notes of what's going on. That's definitely also another thing, just kind of doing the morning chores and observing everything and seeing how things are looking and responding, after a cold night, and noticing the mushrooms all being a darker color than they were earlier, and just little things like that. So yeah, those are the things I like doing, for sure.
Do you have any recommendations for farmers or people, beginning farmers that are interested in growing mushrooms and are considering like, oh, maybe I'll like go into a commercial production?
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to people like that?
I mean, I think what I was saying earlier is like probably a lesson overall is like you don't have to do everything, especially regarding like spawn production and everything, is just like cut yourself some slack and like buy some spawn. And I wish something that I had done in the beginning was even bought pre-inoculated fruiting bags, because it was like such a long, arduous process to get to the point where I was making good fruiting bags. I still had never spent time around like fruiting mushrooms.
Right.
So it's like so much work just to get to that place. It would be like a really nice, kind thing to yourself to like get to also spend some time around some mushrooms while you're learning the steps. But I also think that those things weren't as available even just a few years ago.
Right.
So I think the industry is really changing like that. It wasn't as easy, I think, to get your hands on small quantities of those materials.
Right.
From my understanding, I mean, I haven't been doing it for that long, but even in the 3 years I've been in the industry, I see a difference in being able to order small quantities versus like truckloads, so I think that makes it a little more accessible to get into.
Yes.
But yeah, that, and just like, it doesn't, I'm personally just maybe really into low tech, so like maybe you don't need to like go for all the bells and whistles right away, like just set up some kind of space and see what the mushrooms do.
Yeah, and even like outdoors.
Yeah,
like,
just
that's
outside,
totally
exactly.
an option.
Yeah, totally. So I think, just being able to fill in, not having to do the whole process yourself right away is something I wish that I had done.
Yeah.
I probably would have saved myself like maybe 6 months or 8 months, and like a lot of frustration.
Yeah, make it a little more joyful.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it felt like banging my head on the wall. And like not a lot of people immediately around you to connect about that with. So it's like just digging into books, or I like the internet forums, I think, are a slippery slope. I like advise to stay away from those. For sure.
Yeah.
And they're all usually talking about other mushrooms anyways, so it's not that helpful.
Is there some things that you're like really excited about with your evolution of growing mushrooms? So looking forward, say, a year or 2 years, is there anything that you're like, oh, I feel excited about this coming into fruition?
Yeah,
The possibility.
I feel excited. I think we were talking earlier about changing our farm crop plan to possibly be shut down for some time of the summer and really focus on even though it sounds backwards, the way that we have our system set up, I think it's more sustainable for us to grow in the colder months. Like we use less electricity on keeping things cool. So in growing really interesting varieties and also providing like good nutrient-dense food to people in the area, the kind of 3 seasons, including the winter instead of the summer when there's a lot of other good fresh food available. That feels really like something that we're excited to grow towards and is in line with some of our values. That, and also we're just set up a new outdoor growing space in a greenhouse and shade tunnel, and that feels like a really exciting evolution of doing a lot of experiments with intercropping and playing around growing shiitakes and other varieties outdoors, and maybe burying some reishi logs out there and playing around with maybe same thing, like trying to bury some maybe maitake logs, and just really getting kind of fun and experimental and having that be a big alternative to growing inside of our grow space, which feels pretty like calculated and rigid really, and we're grateful to it because it's kind of like the bread and butter right now, but I'm excited to see what's possible with getting a little bit more wilds in some of our lower tech spaces. That feels exciting, and also just people are getting so excited about eating mushrooms. It's fun to have people get so excited about it. The amount of customers we've had where they're like scared of mushrooms and then they try them and they come back and they love it, and it's great to see people kind of open their eyes to a whole nother world of eating. So it's easy to forget about that when we're carried away with work, but that's a really fun part of it. And also we've been making tinctures, which feels like a really exciting other way to like share some of the medicinal like positive value of mushrooms with people. So that feels like a really exciting thing going forward as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, best of luck in those endeavors, and thanks for having us today.
Thanks for coming. Great to have you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah. Cool.